I want to talk about how to cite a work in an anthology. As you do research and include texts and talk about texts in your essays and in the papers that you write as a student, you'll have to start citing works. And a lot of the times your teacher will give you in your textbook some sources or articles that they want you to reference, and from there you have to cite them in your papers. So in this video we're going to talk about what is an anthology and some common examples that you might encounter. I'm going to walk you through the template for the citation, and I'm going to build an example citation with you. And remember, the citation goes on your Works Cited page, and here for the purposes of our video I'm talking specifically about MLA format in the 8th or the newest edition. Okay, so first, what is an anthology? An anthology is a book that collects works, and all of the works that are collected, or texts or articles or essays or whatever you want to think of them as, all of those works that are collected within the anthology are usually written by a number of different authors. There might be one author who writes a couple of works in the text in the anthology, or there might be some authors who only write one. But what makes the difference here is just understanding that you're looking at a collection of different pieces of writing, generally written by multiple authors, and so MLA gives us a specific way of formatting that. Some examples of anthologies would be like our course textbook, the Advanced Reading and Writing Connection. In the beginning of the book we have a lot of like lesson content and practices, but then in the second half of the book we have a number of different essays written by different authors. And if you look at the cover of our textbook, we see one man's name, but then if you look at the authors of the articles in the second half of our book, they're all written by different people. So our textbook is an example of a partial anthology. If you take a literature course and the textbooks are, like Norton Anthology to British Lit or something, you'll notice that there's a number of different poems or essays or short stories or books within that big anthology, all written by different people. So there's an example there. Really, it's a collection where multiple people have written separate items within that book, and they're all published together in one place. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm giving those examples. The template for citing a work in an anthology begins with the author's last name. Now, this is not the author of the entire book. It's just the author of the text that you are reading within that book. So you have the author's last name followed by a comma. Details are really important to pay attention to when you're creating formatting. It shows your reader that you're educated, that you've paid attention to the little things, and it helps boost your credibility. And also, if you're citing something for your field, it helps your coworkers or people who might trust your opinion on things know that you know what you're talking about. So paying attention to the details, first it's the author's last name followed by a comma, and then their first name followed by a period. Then housed in quotation marks is the title of the work that you're reading. So again, there might be 20 different essays in a book, but which essay did you read? That's the title of the work, of the essay, the text, the poem, whatever it is, that goes in quotation marks here. Then you want to put in italics the title of the anthology. So the anthology, remember, is the whole entire collection of all of those texts. It's the container that holds the work or the one thing that you read. And that goes here following the title of the work. There's a comma. Now we're talking about mostly the anthological information. I don't know if I made that word up. Is that fair? You want to tell who the editor is, and you want to begin with the phrase edited by. The editor's name is usually the name that's on the cover. Then you want to find out who the publisher is. Now, sometimes this information isn't very obvious, so you want to make sure that you go to the copyright page to find this information. When you're looking for the publisher, sometimes you can also look on the spine of the textbook. Most publishers will put their name at the bottom of the book spine. When you're looking at the year published, you'll likely definitely need to go to the copyright page. That page is usually, if you open the cover and you flip once or twice, it's usually right on like the left hand side after flipping the page once or twice. You'll notice a lot of small text, and you'll see usually right at the beginning the word copyright. It'll tell you the year that the text was published. If there's multiple years, it's safe to assume that you're holding in your hands the most recent year. Most publishers, as far as I'm aware, don't plan for future publications in current publications. I mean, they might be doing that, but they're probably not telling us about it. So whatever the most recent year you see is probably the year that you need to cite. And then you want to put the page range of the work. And so what I mean by that is, again, let's say we have this whole big book, this anthology, and imagine it's 500 pages. But all you're citing from is the one essay that you read from pages 77 to 80. That's the page range of the work that you would put there. Now, I'm assuming here that, we're looking at this anthology as a physical hard copy. If that's not the case, then there are other formats and information that you would need to add, but for our purposes, we have a hard copy of our books. So that's what I'm going with here. Okay, so let's build an example. And I want to use the article Growing Less Dumb by Eileen Brenoff that we read last semester. It starts on page 281 in our textbook. And so that's the example that I'm going to be using to build this example for you. And then, of course, for the purposes of your essay, on managing conflicts, you would all be building your citation based on our current reading, which is Managing Conflicts in Relationships by Rudolph F. Verderber. Okay, so first, what I do when I build a citation is I go every step of the way and I check with my template. So my template says the first thing I need to do is write the author's last name. Now remember, this is the author of the work, so in this case it would be Brenoff. Then I'm going to have a comma after that, because just like my template has told me, I need a comma. And then I need her full first name, which is Eileen, followed by a period. After pretty much every punctuation, with one exception, I will make sure to push the space bar. Most of my students do recognize this, but there is a space after most punctuations. The punctuation where there's no space is here in the title of the work, followed by quotation marks. There's a period, and then immediately there is a closed quote. Okay, but first I need to have a space. I need to open my quotation marks and type the title of the work, and the title is Growing Less Dumb. MLA format says for titles, capitalize all of I just call them major words. You wouldn't capitalize words like a or the unless it was the first word in the title. But here we have, in my opinion, all major words. So I'm going to capitalize the first letter of each of them. That's the title. So then I put a period and then I close my quotation marks. Now I need to write the title of the anthology, but I need to make sure that I write this in italics. You'll notice that that's the font style that I'm using here. And so I'm turning on my italics, and I'm going to go, and the title of our anthology, or our whole entire textbook, is the Advanced Reading-Writing Connection. So the Advanced Reading-Writing Connection. All right, now I want to turn off my italics so that I don't put any other content in italics. There's a comma that follows the title of my anthology. I do need the phrase edited by, And then I noticed from my cover page that John Langan is the editor. Now you'll notice that when we gave the name of the author of the essay, we first put the author's last name and then the first name. MLA has this interesting rule where you only do last name, first name for the very first name you write in your citation, and every other name is first name, last name as you would normally address someone. Then we need the publisher, and I'm able to just look on the spine of the textbook to find Townsend Press. Make sure I'm spelling that right. And that's followed by a comma. I noticed that in my copyright page, it says copyright 2014, so that's the year that I'm going to put for my publication year. And then I have to flip back to the article that I read, or the essay Growing Less Dumb, and I noticed that it begins on page 281 and the article itself ends on page 284. Now there are discussion questions and some kind of like understanding questions at the end on page 285 and further, but I'm not really citing those. I'm citing the article itself, so I don't have to worry about those. So this is an example of how to cite a work in an anthology. I think that covers everything. Please let me know if you have any questions.